How you doing? This is Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to call in a buck using a grunt call. These are some tactics that you can use in various situations. In this particular scenario, I went in on public land. I knew there was some other hunters around. And as I was getting set up, I could hear deer coming. It was cracking daylight. I got a little delayed because I was talking to the other hunters before going in. And when I heard the deer coming, it was very cold, so I got my coat out of my backpack to put on before they got close, because I didn't want them to be in close and milling around and me getting too cold. Unfortunately, because there was a little daylight, there was a couple deer that were closer to me than I realized, and when they spooked, it spooked the group of deer out. So that's the starting point here. I've spooked some deer. I waited till about 20-30 minutes after daylight, and I didn't see any movement at all. So I decided, let's give a few calls. Now, what do you do when you start grunting? A lot of people ask me that. Another thing that people ask me is, what setting do I put my grunt call on? That is right around a doe to a young buck on these reed type settings. I never take it off of that. Just about every deer sounds about the same, and that's what they sound like in the woods. It could be a nice buck, it could be a doe. The only time you'll hear a deeper sound than that is when a buck does a tending grunt. And even when he does a tending grunt, you can simulate that with that same sound that I just gave. You just do it long and drawn out. So I've fooled many bucks using the tending grunt at that pitch. So my recommendation first and foremost is use a grunt sound that, if it's on one of these, detachable reed type ones, do it right around that young buck type of a sound. Now let's talk the strategy for calling in this deer that I'm going to use in this example. I always like to start off slow. Another thing you don't want to do is give away your location too easily. Some people will get on the grunt call and start blowing and blowing and blowing, and the deer will get downwind of them and they'll know exactly where they are, or they'll even just be able to pinpoint it from the sound. And when they don't see a deer there, they don't come in. So I had a little grass field down at the bottom. That's like goes into private land down there. So I thought maybe there'll be some bucks cruising the edge of that checking scrapes. It's the end of October, right around the beginning of November. It's that time of year. So I just let off one grunt, and then I counted to 15, and then I let out one more. Again, you don't want to grunt a lot, and I don't like to grunt a lot in close proximity to each grunt, because a deer, if it looks after the first grunt, it looks in your direction. If you grunt another 2 times, it can pinpoint precisely where you're at, precisely. And I've had deer walk straight to the tree from out of sight because they pinpointed me when I was younger. So in this situation, after the one grunt, I heard about 2 or 3 minutes went by, and I heard a grunt. Now, what would you do if you're in the woods and you hear a grunt, but you can't see the deer yet? Now, the compulsion is to quick grunt, but I just waited. This is one thing, especially for new hunters, you need to be patient. So I waited to just see if I eventually saw the deer or what. And if I didn't hear another grunt or see a deer within about 5 minutes, then maybe I would do one single grunt. That's it. But I waited, and eventually I saw the deer looking. So the deer grunted because he heard me from a far distance and cut the distance down. He got twice as much closer to me, but he didn't know where the deer was, so he let out a grunt. Now, here is the decision-making point. If you see the deer and you know it's a deer you'd like to get a shot at, you don't want to overdo it. When I was young and just starting out with the grunt call, there were so many times I overdid it. The deer pinpointed my location, didn't see another deer, and never came in. So what you'll want to do, if you see the deer and you want to shoot, give it one grunt. Wait to see if it responds. If it looks in your direction, it heard you. Now this buck was looking for another deer, but I also saw right away, he was a 6-pointer, a lot like this one on the end here. Let me just pan over a little bit. So I already have a nice 6-pointer here. And this was a 4.5-year-old deer, actually, and a 6-pointer. I got that in southeast Pennsylvania many years ago. But I don't want another huge 6-pointer. I'm looking for something a little different. So when I saw that this was a big 6-pointer, I didn't grunt again. Now let me point something out to you what this deer did. He worked his way across the hillside down below me looking for the deer. I will also say he was straight downwind of me and never got spooked, never looked in my direction. And this was one of my first chances of testing out the smoking of your clothes. I did a video on how to smoke your clothes. I'm testing it out this hunting season as a way of dealing with the deer smelling you and spooking. So he was not fazed at all. So that deer went off. I didn't see it anymore. I didn't want the deer, so I didn't call again. About an hour went by, and I did another little bit of grunts. I let out a grunt, counted to 15, let out one more grunt. Man, that deer was really looking for another deer. He came bolting out of the same area he initially came from. So I'm on the top of a ridge. He initially came out of this spot over here. He came out of that same spot. This is an hour later. So what the deer had done is he worked across that ridge out of sight, and he looped back down along the bottom of the ridge and went back over. He probably likes to bed down over there, and so he went back to that area. When he heard a grunt again, he came back out. Now this time, when he first started coming up the hill, I saw a spread. I'm like, ooh, I think this is a shooter. And I pick up my bow, and I get a better look at him. I'm like, oh, it's that same 6-pointer. But wow, he's a nicer 6-pointer than I even realized. But again, it's not the deer I wanted, so I didn't grunt again. If you want to try to get the deer, hit him with a grunt. If he looks your way, stop. Do never call to a deer if it's looking your way. You don't want him to pinpoint your location. Since I didn't want the deer, I just let him go. And again, he was way down, maybe 80 yards, 70, 80 yards below me on the ridge. Below me. And you don't want a deer coming close to you if you don't want to shoot it. What can happen is if you bring deer in close to you, they can smell where you walk, they could get alerted, they can get nervous, they could wind you, and that can mess up your hunt. Or if it comes to you see a deer later that you do want to shoot, if this deer's still hanging around, it might alert the other deer. So that is not a good idea. If you know that you don't want to shoot, then just let the deer pass through the area. So those are some tactics and strategies for calling in a deer with a grunt. This is something I've done over many years. I've had a lot of success calling in deer. And one of the biggest mistakes new people make to calling is they call way too much. Hunting is exciting, but when you're not seeing anything, the temptation is just to call. And that's how you ruin hunts. If you're going to blind call, do it very sparingly and space out your grunts so you're not making it easy for a deer to pinpoint you before you even get a chance to see him. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you will subscribe to my channel. This year, 2020, I am giving away a compound bow every single week from October through the end of December. So I'm giving away a ton of compound bows. If you're interested in that, subscribe to my channel. Go to my website, seansoutdooradventures.com. Check out the giveaways page. You'll see all the other giveaways that I am doing. I just gave away a tethered Phantom hunting saddle, gave away a snack time feeder, Tacticam video camera. I've got some more Tacticam video cameras I'm giving away, all kinds of stuff. So go to the giveaways page and check that out. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care and God bless.